Hey, it's Kevin Dewitt here. Welcome to another plugin knowledge session. This session we're going to have a look at the Waves MaxxBass plugin. So this plugin is a very simple plugin that is designed to create some extra harmonic content to your bass elements so that they can be represented as best as possible across almost any device there is. So if you've ever done a mix before and you've been working with sub drops or 808s, very low end bass elements, and they sound fantastic in your studio, sound great on your headphones, your studio headphones, sound great on a hi-fi system with a subwoofer, whatever else, but then you take it to your laptop speakers or your little earbuds or wherever else, and suddenly the mix all falls apart because the bass element's just gone. It's not there at all. You can't hear it. You know, the sub drop's not there. Nothing. It's just totally disappeared. Obviously, that's because the speakers you're playing it on just can't represent those bass elements. They're just way too low. So this plugin is designed to help with that by creating that extra harmonic content in a higher range so that the bass elements still sound great on systems that can play those low ends, but they also have they're also audible on smaller speakers. You obviously don't get the same impact that you will get from the proper sub sound, but it'll still be there. It'll be represented. So your mix doesn't fall apart. It still represents well, and it still sounds like the same song. So let's get into it and see what we think of it. Okay, so I've got a bass element here, and basically it sounds like this. So standard bass there, and I've got the plugin turned off. So this bass here is not a real low subby bass, so this possibly will represent quite fine across all different speakers here, but let's have a look at the plugin anyway. So as I said, it's very simple. You can see the layout straight away. This is the default setting here, so if we just bring it in, default setting here, I'm assuming, is doing nothing because it looks like it's doing nothing to me. So the recommendation from the manual is basically to turn up the MaxxBass fader here and see what you get. So you can see the yellow line coming up. All right, so when we look at the main interface here, you'll see the blue is our original bass and the yellow here is our MaxxBass. Now, the way this works is because the point of this is to create some extra harmonic content to represent the low end of the bass. This blue line here is not the entire bass. What this is showing us is what frequency range of the bass we want to create the extra harmonic content for. So anything above this range here will be passed through the plugin unaffected straight out to the audio signal, or at least it'll be blended back into the affected signal. So what we're doing is we're passing the higher frequencies of the bass straight through and blending it back in with our affected signal so that the bass sounds pretty much the same, right? Because the high frequencies have no problem being represented on any speaker. They're fine. So why impact them? And that's the point, they don't. So we have this setting here, which sets our frequency control of where we want to do the extra harmonic content. So in the case here, the default setting is set to 80 Hertz. So that means that anything below 80 Hertz, we're going to create extra harmonic content for. Anything above, we're not going to touch. So we can go higher if we want, up to 256, or we can go really low just to grab those little subs down below there. Now, our yellow line is obviously our MaxxBass setting here. So the higher we push it, the more of the affected signal is being done there. We've got our original bass, we've got an input control. So we've got an input control here. So if our input is a little bit too hot, we can bring that down to get a nice balance here, especially when we start pushing in our affected signal here, we might start to clip. So we might want to reduce our input down, or obviously reduce our other signals here. Okay, so we can have our original bass here we can push it higher if we want, we can go lower, whatever else. And then we've got our our harmonic content, which we can push up to any level we want. We've got obviously a meter here telling us our output level, and we've got a clip option here, which is telling us whether the signal is clipping or not. Obviously it's not clipping at the moment. And we've got these 3 buttons here, so we can actually listen to 3 different options. So we've got our audio here, which is the whole signal, so it's everything mixed together. We've got our MaxxBass, which is just going to play us our extra harmonic content that it's generated. And we've got our original bass with none of the effect applied. We've also got a filter here, so we can change our slope of our harmonic content here. 6 dB, 12 dB, 24 dB, and we can change the decay value on the other side as well, so we can play with that setting there. We also have, they refer to it as an upward compressor, so we can turn that on. We can change our value there, 4:1, 1:1. So this dynamics here affects the harmonic content. So it's an upward compressor, so the ratio, as the ratio is increased, the level of the harmonics also increase, but the amount of dynamics is reduced. So it sort of gets louder, but it's chopping off or bringing up the lower part of the frequencies to lessen the dynamic range, so it's more contained. And our response time here controls the attack and release of the harmonic generation. So we're stating that faster times make the harmonics respond quicker, so we can play with that anyway, but it's a very small amount adjustment there. Okay, so the 3 buttons here, we've got audio, which is our mix of everything together. We've got MaxxBass, which is a representation of what the harmonic content is going to be adding is, and our original bass, which is this section here based on this frequency setting here. So if we go to the highest setting, you can hear the difference. Now, when you preview these, they just play the signal. It doesn't matter what the settings are here. You're not getting a representation of these settings. You're just getting to hear what the actual content is. So that's this here. So like I could adjust that. Now, depending on what you're listening on will depend on what you're hearing here. If you're listening on laptop speakers, you might not hear much if I go down here. You may not hear much if I go there. So this is what the MaxxBass is going to represent at that setting. If I take it down there, and then when we add the 2 together, this is actually our settings here. So Now, if I take these two settings down as I have done here, then what we should be hearing is the bass above 256, because I've taken out the original bass and I've taken out the max bass. If I lower that, you'll get more bass. So if we add our original bass in, which is the low 256, we've got our original. Now if we add our max bass in, and then if we change our filter, okay, you can hear a bit more top end in that. When I change that to K, obviously a lot more low end coming through when we change our filter steepness. Now obviously a 1-to-1 ratio here is not going to do anything. So you can see there we can get some nasty sort of distortion going on there with this compressor here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and simulate the impact that this can have on small speakers, right? And I'm going to exaggerate things a little bit because I don't know exactly what device you're going to be listening on or what you're trying to represent here. But what I've got is I've got an EQ here, frequency. I'm putting it after the MaxxBass plugin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll off a lot of this low end here. So we're going to take our natural bass, which sounds like this. This is what we're listening to in our studio. And when we go to our little speakers, this is what we get. Now you'll see from this waveform here that our bass is sitting around this spot, okay, which is about 140 Hertz. So having the default setting here of 80 is probably not going to give us our true impact here. So I'm going to take it above that setting now. I might even go up to say 150 and we'll see what that does. Now the default setting is obviously there, and as I said, I've moved that up to 150, so we're trying to capture our fundamental of our bass element there. If it was a kick or something like that, it would be lower. So it depends what you're trying to affect here. All right, so again, what we've got is this is normal through our little speakers. And now let's bring in our plugin. You know, we could even go higher or exaggerate it. Now if I bypass it, so you can hear how it sounds fatter. It sounds thin. It sounds fuller, it sounds more natural. It almost sounds like it's the original bass. Now, the thing is that this is a bit of a trick and a bit of an illusion to our ears and our brain, that this harmonic content is tricking our ears and our brain into perceiving that we're hearing that low end and that we're hearing that bass naturally, but we're not, because it's not there. Okay, but you can hear the difference between. It almost sounds like the real bass. It's just your ears are perceiving it that way. Well, that's what it's doing to me. Hopefully it's doing the same to you. And that's just with a simple default setting there. We could obviously adjust some other settings and do some other things here. But I want to do the same thing, but let's switch over to a kick. Just get this set up. It's mono. So again, all right. So again, we've got our frequency here. So this is just bypass everything. So here's our kick. Turn on frequency. We just get this little tick. Now if we turn that off, you'll see our fundamental is about here. It's about 75 hertz. So in theory, if we leave it in the default state of 80, this should be pretty good. So we're going from this to this on our little speaker. Now we'll bring in our MaxxBass. Now obviously clipping. So our speaker might be a little bit high in this regard here. How about we wind it down a little bit and see what we do. Okay, that's a bit better. So it's obviously got limitations. We can't go extreme. But you can hear there's a bit more power in the kick, and it sounds a little bit better. As I said, it's not a miracle. It's not going to fix everything, but it gives you an idea of what can be done. But let's have a check of some presets here, and let's see what it can do. So this is somebody's idea of a kick. So they take the original bass out and just add the max bass in for this one. So let's see what that does. And if we turn this off, so they're actually changing the sound of the bass with this setting here. So there you go. That is the Waves MaxxBass plugin. So hopefully you've can see the power of the plugin. It's obviously a very simple plugin, very easy to use, but can just open up your mixes to represent on any or almost any device out there without ever worrying about low end disappearing and just not being able to be heard, or your mix falling apart because all your low end has disappeared. So check it out, try it on your mix. Let me know what you think. Got any questions, ask me in the comments. Hopefully it's been helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.